welcome to this live broadcast from TrueFire Studios. Guess who we have back this week? Reverend Robert Jones. For those of you that were tuned in last time as one of our top-rated, top-watched TrueFire Live broadcasts ever, you need to go back and watch that. You'll want to do that after you see this one. And we'll post a link to that here in the chat thread. Meanwhile, I am just thrilled to have the Reverend back. He's a storyteller. He's a killer singer. He's a killer guitarist. He's a Kresge Arts Fellow. And I love this, my favorite quote about the Reverend. Perhaps the world's most highly educated blues musician, an ordained minister, a longtime DJ, and a living encyclopedia of blues history. The Reverend Robert Jones is comfortable among juke joint loud talkers, fancy-hatted church ladies, and PhDs alike. And I'll attest to that. We have a blast every time he's back here. And in a moment, we'll talk about the 2 courses we did this week. And we'll also talk about our mission. I just want to allow the Reverend, look at that, beautiful. Timing's perfect.
Good.
Reverend, how are you, man?
I'm good. It's great to be back here.
I know. We got you back pretty quick, didn't we?
You did. You squeezed me in Florida in the month of August.
Man, we just, we couldn't wait for the next round. The feedback we got from Blues Traditions, the first course, was phenomenal. And when you were here the first time, I mean, we have, as we've discussed, for years, years, been trying to find a way to, let's say, document educationally the blues, where it came from, the different kind of streams it went off into, because everything stems from the blues, doesn't it?
It's true. It's like if you think of American music as being this gigantic tree in the middle of the field, and everybody's got a branch. It's a rock and roll branch and a jazz branch and a hip hop branch and R&B and country and, bluegrass and everything. But the trunk of that tree is the blues, because almost every one of those traditions, they have a blues form in that tradition. And if the musicians don't know each other at all, they can call the blues, country. You can say, it's going to be honky tonk blues and G, and boom, everybody knows where to go.
That's right.
So that's one of the things that makes blues so special, because it's sort of like a universal language.
Yeah, we were talking over lunch. Certainly, the birth of jazz was the blues. The birth of rock and roll was the blues. But the blues, those branches spread pretty wide, don't they? We were talking about the 1-6-2-5 progression, which is very, all the popular singer-songwriters of today are using that progression, which stems back, roots back to the blues.
Absolutely.
So what we're doing with Reverend here, for those of you, I was going to say for those of you that are interested in the blues, but it's really whatever music you're interested in, this journey we're collaborating on. We're making each other's dreams come true, because we really needed the Reverend, his perspective, his ability to tell the stories, and then to illustrate the stories with his music, right? And hopefully we're helping the Reverend, achieve one of his lifelong missions of documenting this, to forever, so it doesn't get forgotten, right?
Right. You're definitely helping the Reverend on a bunch of different levels. I go around and I do camps, adult music camps or blues camps, sometimes folk camps. And you always get the feeling you're not reaching as many people as you'd like to reach, because, there are only so many camps and people can only get so much time off. And there's, the players in other countries and other places and different ages, and maybe they don't even have the ability to get up and go somewhere for a week to learn 4 or 5 tunes from you. So the idea of this amazing 21st century way of reaching so many people at in so many places at the same time is just a godsend. And I don't take all that seriously, the idea that I'm the best educated blues man around or that kind of stuff. But one of the things I do know is that I love the idea, even from the time I was a kid, I was always a mimic. And that used to get me in trouble. And when I'd hear a voice, I could imitate it or sort of replicate it. And the same thing happens to me musically. There are ideas that I hear I know that there are more accomplished players or, people who can play rings around me in terms of technique. But the one thing that I've always been blessed to do is to hear something in one place and connect it to something in another place, and to sort of provide those connections and create those kinds of pathways between things that we thought were previously unrelated. I think that's one of the gifts that I really feel that God has given me. And the purpose, we were talking about this earlier, the purpose is not only to educate folks about this music and to bring it out of the stereotype that it's this really simple kind of gut bucket base level music that has nothing to do with great music, but to understand that this is the foundation of American music and that blues needs to be valued and cultivated, but also it's a folk form. So that means that some kid picking up a guitar or a mandolin or ukulele can latch on to this really amazing African American unique form and start to create. You don't necessarily need to read music, don't necessarily need 1,001 lessons. You need a start. You need a fundamental grounding in what this music was and is in order to start creating your own music. And so that message is a powerful message, and a form like TrueFire allows me to bring it to places I probably would never get to in my life.
Well, it is, I'm always blown away. And I will ask everybody, if you haven't already, let us know where you're tuned in from. Because if you'll recall, last time we had folks all over the world, the community of musicians, the community of blues lovers, the community of guitarists in particular. It just transcends borders, race, creed, color. It's a phenomenal example of what you're talking about in terms of being able to connect and reach out and share, the gift of music, right? And the gift of knowledge, which is what you bring to the table. Man, we have a lot of ground to cover today. So, I want the Reverend to do a lot of playing and singing for you. So let's talk about the first course that you did this week. Okay, right. So we started with the Reverend's very first course was called Blues Traditions, and the Reverend covered a lot of ground there. We're going to post a link in chat. Please go have a look at that. It's almost like a must-have for certainly anybody who digs the blues, but as we've discussed, anybody that plays music. Okay. Now what we're starting to do is explore some of those other arteries and streams and rivers. So we did 2 projects the Reverend brought in. The first one we'll talk about is Blues Traditions, Electric Roots.
Right.
Describe what the premise of that course is.
Okay. So I thought, who are 4 major artists that people look to as sort of being the voices of modern, and when I say modern, we're still talking 50, 60 years ago, but blues. So often you run into people who say, I came to my knowledge of the blues through rock or through some other form. And then what they mean is that I discovered that there was Muddy Waters by listening to somebody who was covering a Muddy Waters tune, or Howlin' Wolf, or Bo Diddley, or whoever it is. But the fact of the matter is, these roots work both ways. Those artists, and we chose to do just 4 because time and skill or whatever. But Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Elmore James, and John Lee Hooker. And these four artists are really representative of the foundation of Chicago, and in the case of Hooker, Detroit blues, modern blues.
Electric blues.
A modern electric blues, right? So somebody feels when they get there, they've gone back, they've discovered the roots. But the fact is that these four artists, they came out of acoustic roots, right? So they were listening to musicians a generation before them who were producing the blues, and they took it, translated it, and took it to the electric guitar with the possibilities therein, because the electric guitar solved problems for them. It was loud, it was strident, it was aggressive, and not only that, but the fact that they were playing through these old archtop guitars with D-Armand pickups going through underpowered amps created distortion, and that distortion itself became a part of the blues aesthetic. So they were inventing blues even as they were inventing blues from the traditions that they came out of, and now we look back at them like they're the fathers, and of course they are the fathers. We need to understand the grandfathers and the great-grandfathers and the ancestors all the way back.
So let's give folks an example of I picked out some of the ones that I love. I loved the Jinx Blues, Sun House, and connect the dots between the roots to acoustic and the roots to electric.
Okay.
Because we've got two sets of roots here. You're going to need an acoustic guitar and you're going to need an electric guitar when you work with this course. But you're going to see where the roots of electric blues, the blues that's played today by all of our favorite blues masters, roots to these guys. And these guys, the pioneers of electric blues, we're going to show you where their roots were.
Absolutely. So you think about somebody like Son House, Eddie James House Jr., who happens to be buried in Detroit, about 2 blocks from my house, because eventually he came up to Detroit and got odd jobs and whatnot. But when he was in Coleman County, Mississippi, he was the man, along with folks like Charlie Patton and Willie Brown, and then the next generation was Robert Johnson. And so Muddy Waters, McKinley Morganfield, talks about going to some juke joint where Son was playing for 3 weeks, and he was going there every night to hear Son House play the blues. And so obviously we know that Son was a major influence on Muddy. In fact, Muddy talks about having 3 major influences. 1 is Son House, 2 is Robert Johnson, and the other one is Muddy Waters himself, right? So he's coming up with ideas on his own. He's not just copycatting. But let's say he hears Son House playing a song like the Jinx Blues, and Son plays something like this. Oh, woke up this morning with the jinx around, round my bed. You know, I woke up this morning with the jinx all around my bed. Well, you know, I thought about you, baby, like to have killed me dead. You know, I'd rather be walking up and down the road. I'd rather be walking up and down the road, yeah, than to be working just for my board and clothes. Now that figure is something that you hear not only in Son House's music, but in Willie Brown's music and in Charlie Patton's music. So these guys are listening to each other, and that idea of walking down these 2 D strings when you're in open G tuning, it's what I feel when I hear Muddy Waters do a song called Feel Like Going Home. He doesn't walk all the way down there. He just sort of walks right? So that gives you the central lick of what's going on with Muddy. So now, come up to Chicago looking for work related to the stockyards, related to all the industries that are happening in Chicago. Go straight up Highway 61. You get yourself a nice arch-top guitar, like this fine Sears Silvertone model. And it sold new for, I believe, $69. They gave you a case and a wonderful little strap, which was a string. And you put one of these aftermarket D-Armand pickups on it. You play it through, you know, your little amp. And so you also learn from Son the slide, right? Right? And so you put that all together when you're playing this club on the south side of Chicago, and Jinx Blues sort of becomes. If I feel tomorrow like I feel today, gonna pack my suitcase and make my getaway. Well, feel tomorrow, Lord, like I feel today. Well, I'm gonna pack my suitcase, Lord, and make my getaway. Well, you know, yeah, man, it seemed like hours seem like days. Whoa, baby, gonna have to make my getaway. Well, minutes seem like hours, and hours, they seem like days. Well, my baby, come on soon. I'm sure gonna get away. So, you know, that whole idea of where this electric music comes from is, to me, fascinating. When I hear a little strain of this over here, and I realize that the guitar is doing some of the work, and the artist is doing most of the work, but the amplifier is doing some of the work. And we start to understand that sound of the louder you try to get that little amp, more distorted it becomes, right? And even the fact that as Son House is playing this sort of bar chord, Muddy is playing. You know, he's digging in with that slide, and it's creating a new sound, but it's based in the old sound.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a great example. That's one of how hey, Tommy, how many, we cover 4 electric artists, all with roots examples in the acoustic blues artist. How many total tunes?
There's 2 performances on electric per artist, so there's 8 total electric performances.
Okay, so that's an example. Reverend will give you background, will tell you the story, give you an acoustic demo showing you where the roots were on the acoustic side of that line, and then play the electric version of that. Which electric version, as you can hear, does root to the acoustic version, but also roots to everything we play today in one way or another. Reverend, let's do another couple, because
Okay.
this is a really special, kind of unique project.
Well, this is fun for me too, because normally I don't get a chance to like sit down and do an A B A B A
I
B without my
know, man.
grandkids going, "Oh, Daddy, pop pop," that kind of stuff.
How
But-
about, you want to do Tommy Johnson, that one?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Set that up.
So let's see. Tommy Johnson is a great player, also from the Mississippi Delta. But Tommy's gift is really his singing and his songwriting. He has a way of saying things that is poetic in a really wonderful way. I was thinking about that this morning, that some cases there's some stuff that we need to discard because it may have been humorous in, say, the 1930s, but it no longer works in the 21st century. But even though we may discard some of these lyrics, we need to keep the music that underpins them, right? So anyway, here's the idea. Tommy Johnson, who was one of Howlin' Wolf's influences. And Howlin' Wolf, we really talk about three influences in this one song. One is Charlie Patton. Charlie Patton is this guy from the Delta, has this wonderful kind of string snapping, really cool, funky approach. Sometimes he just stays on the one chord all the way through the song. And that heavily influenced young Howlin' Wolf or Chester Arthur Burnett. The other guy is Tommy Johnson, who has this magnificent falsetto that he uses for some of his tunes, and also has this idea of it's like a poetic way of saying things, that just like drives home the point that he's making. And the third voice, as unlikely as it might seem, is Jimmy Rogers, the father of country music. Because Wolf loved Jimmy Rogers. And think about it, Jimmy Rogers was probably the most famous cat coming out of Mississippi in the 1920s and 30s. And what you have is Jimmy Rogers has a yodel. Like, yodelay-hee-oh, yodelay-hee-oh-lay-hee. When you hear country music, that instead of the turnaround that we hear in the blues, we're hearing Jimmy's yodel. Right? Now, Wolf loved that yodel too, but out of this 300-pound, 6'3" black man, that yodel came out, right? So these three elements go into this Howlin' Wolf tune, but the one element I really want to point out is the song that Tommy Johnson did called Cool Drink of Water. And it's kind of like this. Well, I asked her for water, brought me gasoline. I asked her for water, brought me gasoline. Well, I asked her for water, brought me gasoline. Now, I love that little, thing where he does this bend into this move and then bang. It almost sounds like a yodel in and of itself. It's like a yodel against a yodel, right? But then Howlin' Wolf sort of takes that idea and simplifies it. And it makes sense that if you've got a band that can't follow the little subtle nuances that you're doing, you need to make it pretty straight ahead. So Charlie Patton is known for some of those tunes like Pony Blues, where he just plays it and it stays straight ahead and it stays in the pocket. But also, you've got the yodel that's coming off of Tommy Johnson, and you've got the real yodel that's coming off of Jimmy Rogers. So Wolf decides, take the guitar, put it into standard, And it comes up with. I asked her for water. Yeah, you know she brought me gasoline. I asked my baby for some water. Well, you know she brought me gasoline. Ain't that the tubest woman that you ever see? So that's, that's that idea of Howlin' Wolf, sort of taking this Mississippi music, this Mississippi, three fathers of Mississippi blues, of Mississippi acoustic music, two black and one white, and turning it into Chicago blues by simplifying it to something the band can just get behind, that groove and funk all night. So even further simplifying that is the basis of his Smokestack Lightning. Which allows him to howl/yodel all night.
I feel terrible making you switch guitars so much, but can we do just one more?
Sure.
Strap on that acoustic, and while you're doing that, I'll do a little bit of housekeeping by first telling you where people are tuned in from. We've got tuned in live right now, Detroit, Sweden, California, Bradenton, Florida, Mexico, Ireland, Denmark, Wilmette, Illinois, Harlem, the Netherlands, Hawaii, New England, Portugal, Michigan, Georgia, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Los Angeles, Utah, Sweden, Pittsburgh, Indiana, Brussels, and Belgium.
Wow.
Talk about a community, right?
That is totally amazing. And that's what really, TrueFire and this whole community allows me to reach all those places.
Exactly.
And develop all of these friendships with people, again, that I probably will never get a chance to meet. Certainly, I travel a fair amount, but I'm kind of anchored to Detroit. I have a congregation in Detroit. I have a family in Detroit. But certainly the fact that you hear Sweden and you hear, New York started off with Michigan, though. Hey.
There you go.
But yeah, that's really amazing and exciting in this 21st century.
And while we're talking, San Diego and Iowa just chimed in, okay?
Cool.
You might get to Iowa one of these days. Who knows?
I've been to Iowa.
There.
Iowa's a cool place, but yeah, I love it.
If you haven't chimed in yet, oh my goodness! Even while we're talking, London, Texas, Nova Scotia, Cleveland, Italy, Norway, British Columbia, India. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. You got a lot of fans all over the place, huh?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Isn't that crazy?
Man. It just warms your heart. It's really gratifying.
Couple of other things. We're doing something a little special today. We have a trivia question. In the chat thread, you'll see a link, but also if you look underneath the video on YouTube, if you're in kind of chat mode there, you'll see a link to a trivia question. If you click that link, you can fill out a form with what you think the correct answer is. At the end of this broadcast, we'll pick one of the people at random, of course, and award you a $100 gift card here at TrueFire, good as cash. You can pick up all of the Reverend's courses. We've got both of them on pre-order too. There's the link in the chat thread as well as underneath the video. And while you're underneath the video, please see that thumbs up, click that, show your love, share your love. Reverend's worked hard these past couple of days and working hard for you now. Give us some thumbs up there. We really appreciate it. And Reverend, one more time, we're going to do the switcheroo with the guitars.
Okay.
You want to do that Mississippi Fred thing?
It works for me.
Okay, cool.
So again, we talk about these artists that some people are familiar with, but many people probably aren't. And a guy who's near and dear to my heart, John Lee Hooker, because he is, many people think of Detroit blues and they think of Hooker. And in fact, I met John Lee Hooker on a couple of occasions. He's a pretty amazing guy. But here is Mississippi Fred McDowell playing not in that area that we associate with the Stovall plantation, the Stovall sound, but playing out of the hill country in Mississippi, which has its own kind of cool aesthetic, not necessarily the 1-4-5 blues, and not necessarily the model or the chassis that we talked about with Muddy Waters, but the idea being that you find a groove and you just ride it and you stay in it. It's the music of someone like T. Model Ford or R.L. Burnside. Or Robert Wolfman Balfour, right? Now, this isn't necessarily, again, this is not a slide tradition, but it is a tradition that utilizes open tunings. So you have a open G tuning or an open A tuning, which is the same tuning, just cranked up a notch or two. And you'll have someone like R.L. Burnside doing this piece that's been kicking around the Delta forever called Poor Black Matty. Poor Black Matty ain't got a change, changing clothes, called a man. He got drunk and throw the clothes outdoors. And that groove just, keeps going, right? All night if you need to, right? So that groove is what really, to my mind, gave rise to someone like John Lee Hooker. And people talk about the fact that Hooker's music doesn't sound like any of these other guys because he's coming out of that hill country aesthetic of finding a groove and riding it and making it be what he wants it to be. If you see film of John Lee, you'll notice that he kind of tends to anchor that index finger on that second string at the first fret. And that kind of gives you a hint as to where he's coming from. Because as we go to just do it without the strap. As we go to this open G tuning, we'll turn her down a little bit as we retune. Give her a little juice. So, as you hear John Lee, you'll hear something like this. Right? And that is the same Black Matty leg. But he also has this idea of finding, like a Mississippi Fred McDowell might find, a lick that is a rhythmic lick. So Fred McDowell does something like Kokomo blues. When you come home, baby, write me a few of your lines. When you come home, baby, write me a few of your lines. Right, that kind of thing. But instead of that with a slide, Hooker is very much about this idea of just finding this in the pentatonic scale, a lick that works. Well, my mama don't lie. Us to play the blues round here. Well, mama don't lie. Us to play the blues round here. Well, we don't care what mama don't lie. Gonna play the blues anyhow. So we get that really cool groove going, and it can vary. It could be. And then when Hooker decides he wants to do some improvising, it's kind of like that saying. So there's, it's that idea of taking something that was sort of had one form or one identity in one place, and through the process of electrifying it, through the process of presenting it to a new audience in a new place, it changes. And you make it what you need it to be when you need it to be it.
Well, what's so interesting about this, and thank you for indulging us in swapping the guitars. I know that's tough to do in a live scenario, but, so you show us the roots to the acoustic artists, how the pioneers of the electric blues picked up and was inspired by those roots. And then when you're playing the electric tunes, we're hearing how some of today's artists are quoting those, and making them their own, but it's the same language, isn't it?
It is.
It all connects together.
It all connects together. And so one of the things that I want to sort of bring to the fore, we're constantly trying to get bigger. We're trying to get more elaborate as guitar players. We want, this big chord, this jazz chord, this funk chord, that kind of thing. But sometimes if you look back to what our ancestors were doing with simpler instruments and simpler times with simpler rhythms, you find something that is a taproot into something that's primal. When I think about John Lee Hooker's music, I'm thinking, Howlin' Wolf. I'm thinking about talk about primal. You got a guy howling, right?
Right.
You don't
Good
get too
point.
much more primal than that, right?
No, you can't.
But when you're trying to get to something that is primal and universal, then it's amazing. I've seen artists, and I've been one of those artists, who has opened for John Lee Hooker. And we bring all of our fancy stuff, and then he shows up on a stage with a guitar,
Right.
sits in a chair, and his foot is mic'd.
Right.
And people are in a trance, and they're going, "Oh, Hooker, Johnny
Absolutely.
Lee," and you're like, he played one chord all night.
Right.
Well, that one chord though had all of that energy in it that our 6 or 7 chords didn't, and so we can learn some things again from going back to the roots, and then going back to the roots that go even further back.
Yeah, and I mean that is I think the the soul of what we're doing together here is, yes, we are telling the history of the blues. You're telling those stories. We're illustrating that with musical examples, right? But all of these teachings connect to what we're playing today.
Definitely.
In very big ways by giving us really, like you said, the primal understanding of what's really going on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk now. Wait until we tell you about this guitar, by the way. This is a great story. We'll do that towards the end. So if you've tuned in to you have got to watch Reverend's first live broadcast. It's in the YouTube channel. It's on TrueFire. But we'll tell you again about this particular guitar. We're going to talk about the second course we shot this week called Blues Traditions, the Evangelists.
Yeah.
I want to shout out to a couple new folks that chimed in from Largo, Brazil, Brooklyn, Germany, Scotland, Louisiana, Fresno. Thank you all. Thank you all for, stopping whatever it is that you're doing out there to tune in here and share this live bit of moments with us. Also, the trivia question, we're going to pick the winner at the end of this broadcast, which will be, probably within the next 20 or 30 minutes, somewhere in there. The question is, Tampa Red, the famous bluesman, Tampa Red, was known as, quote, the man with the blank blank. If you can answer that, click the link on the form, enter your answer, and you'll be in the random digital shuffle, and we'll pick a winner for the $100 gift card. Also, you'll see that there are links to pre-order both of the Reverend's new courses that we've shot this week. You can pre-order them. You can save 25%. And you can also use that promo code to pick up the first course, Blues Traditions, which, if you dig in what you're hearing and learning and seeing, I think you definitely want to start with that one. All right, let's talk about the Evangelists. And I just want you to also explain, I remember I've learned so much from you and with our time together, and you were talking about how, the church, there were blues that they frowned upon and blues that they embraced.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and then segue into what the Evangelist Course is about?
You think about the fact that the blues, as we were talking about at lunch, the blues is the trunk of that tree of American music. But really, you think about it, the roots that go into that trunk came out of the spiritual. And that was what happened when African music met European music in the Deep South. And you have a lot of themes that are, may have started off as a Protestant hymn, but you end up teaching it to an enslaved person who came over on a ship like the Amistad, and it changes. So you write a song called a charge to keep, I have a God to glorify, and the preacher teaches it to this enslaved person, and it comes out, "E charge to keep, I have," right? And it's wonderful, that process of how that happens. Well, every generation has this idea of what sacred music should be. And even in the early days of the church, this music was really fluid. Nobody was quite sure if you wanted to put the 23rd Psalm to music, what the music should be. And sometimes it came out sounding more like Pop Goes the Weasel than anything sacred. But let's say we finally get down to what we think is a sacred hymn. And then in the 1920s, as starting really in Reconstruction, these black preachers start going to school and getting better educating, becoming classically educated. And they start, especially in the Baptist church, to move away from the old spiritual into the concert spiritual. That's the Fisk University Jubilee Singers, and they're taking a song like, I've got a Savior into that kingdom, ain't that good news, which is beautiful. But the person who's been working 6 days a week, they kind of want a little bit more emotional juice, right? So there's this guy named Thomas Dorsey, whose previous blues nickname was Georgia Tom Dorsey. And he's got this idea of taking sacred music and putting it on blues changes, right? And he calls it gospel. Now that's where we're talking about. Nobody in this church is like, I ain't going to hell listening to blues, all right? That's where they drink whiskey and shoot each other and seduce women. So I ain't into blues. But then I'm also not going to hell listening to songs like, Mama took a chicken, she thought it was a duck, put it on the table with his legs straight up. Out came the children with a cup and a glass, and we all caught the gravy from his yes, yes, yes. That, you don't want that in church. But that's precisely what Thomas Dorsey used to bridge to his new music called gospel. Because that 1, 6, 2, 5 change, which is, darling, you send me. Or, that's the sound of the men working on the chain gang. I mean, the reason Sam Cooke used that so much is because he came out of the church. And the gospel is built on those changes. So after Thomas Dorsey went through a particularly horrific point in his life where his wife died in childbirth, and then the child died 3 days later, and he had to lose both his new bride and his new baby, put them in the same casket. It devastated him. 6 months later, he can't play anything. 6 months later, he's walking past the piano, and he's kind of like, maybe I got something. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. Lord, I'm tired, I'm weak, I'm worn. Right? And he goes, he presents that, puts it in sheet music, and people are kind of like warm to it, but Dorsey was not a great singer. So he had to find a great singer, and he finds this woman from Louisiana named Mahalia Jackson, right?
Yeah.
And Mahalia needs breathing room. So as guitarists, we talk about in this course, how do we go from this to something that my wife or Mahalia Jackson or some of these other great singers could sing to? And we talk about inserting passing chords and inserting some movement into this progression so that it becomes what we now recognize as gospel. So it becomes more like. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. Lord, I'm tired, I am weak, Lord, I'm worn, Lord, I'm worn. Through the storm, Lord, through the night, lead me on to the light. Place my hand, precious Lord, and lead me on. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call, hold my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me on.
Wow. I can't get enough of that, man.
It's pretty cool, when you think about it.
It's just very cool. I mean, first of all, it's a really important, let's call it chapter in the blues.
Oh, yeah.
But what we loved is how you taught us how to kind of sweeten up some of the changes, make them a little more emotional, evocative, just killer stuff. Not to mention we get to learn these great tunes.
Yeah. And one of the things that's great about the Evangelist Course is, the first half we really talk about gospel generically, like gospel 101, some things that work in a lot of forms of gospel and sacred songwriting. In other words, when you listen to Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, there's a reason that it sounds sacred, even though it's really about seduction. Or you listen to Tom Waits, and he's got a song called "Down by the Train," and it's about forgiveness and it's about grace, but it never mentions any particular deity, Jesus, Christianity, Judaism, because it's really about the overall universal concept of redemption and forgiveness and grace. So if you really think about it, if I've got a song and I want it to have that sacred feel, but not necessarily invoke the name of any particular religious variety or deity or denomination, how do I do it using the music? And so we talk about things like using the 3 chord or the 6 chord, or certainly the relative minor, and how that helps to sweeten up and it is evocative of a religious or uplifting or inspirational idea to the exclusion of whatever the lyric is.
Killer, man. You ready for a couple of questions?
Sure.
Okay. So we've got a few questions here. Please post whatever questions you have, and we'll do our best to answer them all. From Zachary, can the Rev talk about Leadbelly, or perhaps Jimi Hendrix to fit the electric theme? That's kind of a spread there.
Yeah.
Let's see you work with that one, Reverend.
Okay. First of all, Leadbelly. I love Leadbelly because physically I look a little bit like Leadbelly. I'm kind of stocky guy, and I have white hair. I've done a show, like a one-man show that's kind of a Leadbelly show, and I used to have powder in my hair. I don't need the powder anymore, right? So I love Leadbelly. No, neither do any of us, right? And one of the modules we were talking about was the 12-string, according to Leadbelly, because he was really this gifted 12-string player, and a lot of what he does is adaptable to 12-string or to a baritone guitar, a guitar that's tuned, say, B to B, as opposed to E to E, because he dropped it down. But a lot of his music is so iconic. Where am I? So while I'm getting in tune to do the Leadbelly thing,
What tuning are you going to?
standard.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because even though old Led played a 12-string guitar, for the most part, except for a few occasions, what he's doing is playing a 12-string where the, relative to the other strings is still in standard. So, he might do a song like, well, follow me down, to Mr. Tom Hughes' town. And it's a lot easier to go hoo, hoo, hoo when you tune down 5 steps. But yeah, I love Leadbelly stuff, and we look forward maybe to, at some point, adding a chapter on the 12-string, according to Leadbelly, in our catalog.
Definitely.
As for Jimi Hendrix, certainly Jimi Hendrix was a guy who, was a side man for Little Richard, certainly knew his way around the blues. You listen to something like, I'll say, So that's him sort of taking a piece of Robert Johnson and turning it to Red House.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, Jimmy was definitely in the groove. And when you think about it, the fact that Jimmy started off on ukulele is just so cool. So, it's
Did
not
he
necessarily my strong point or my wheelhouse, Jimi
didn't
Hendrix
know
music.
that.
Yeah, the first thing somebody found him a broken ukulele, and that's what he started off on.
Unbelievable.
That's pretty cool, man. If you're a musician, you're going to find a way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, he does. I mean, if you listen to his playing over the years, not just when he really hit it big, but even when he really hit it big, especially his early work, all rooted to the electric blues and to a lot of the acoustic blues as well.
Sure.
Okay, another question here. How about Reverend Gary Davis?
Again, there's a little bit of Reverend Gary Davis on the Blues Traditions, the first one, which I consider to be a sampler. And I don't think you can talk about American music without talking about the Rev. At the end of the Blues Evangelists, or the Evangelist chapter, there is also some Reverend Gary Davis where he does a song called Samson and Delilah, or If I Had My Way. If I had my way, if I had my way, if I had my way, I would tear this building down. You read about Samson, he was strong from birth, strongest man that ever had lived on earth. One day when Samson was a-walking along, he looked on the ground and spied an old jawbone. Picked up that bone, got no chain, broke like thread, no. And when he got to moving, 10,000 was dead. Good God, if I had my way, if I had my way, if I had my way, I would. Good God. So I love the Rev, and I would look forward to one of these days, hitting a chapter, because one of the things about Reverend Davis is he was amazing in all keys. And there's some things that he does that are applicable, in C and in A and in G and in E. And he has one chord blues, and he also one chord gospel, and instrumental songs, and just preaching songs. He has a song called Crucifixion that's just a talking gospel. So again, we're looking to hear ideas of what you guys would love to hear in terms of this course.
That's a really, really good point. Underneath, certainly here in chat, but you can also send an email to us anytime. There are discussion threads underneath all of the Reverend's courses. You can chime in there. Let us know what chapters you think belong in this history. I think Reverend and TrueFire are going to be working together for a long time, so we'll cover it. We'll get there. But what do you want to hear and see next?
Right.
Can we do one more example from the Evangelists Course? You know which one? I really love the Blind Willie Johnson one. Can you do that one, please?
Yeah, we can take a stab at Blind. Now, Blind Willie was an amazing guitarist and singer. And we really talk about open D tuning, because he played with a slide much of the time. In fact, that's really, I think, what makes us love Blind Willie Johnson's music so much is the way it flowed with his voice. And he had this voice that was really raspy and gravelly, But, I found out through research that that was a bit of affect. He's a street singer, right? So if you sing with your natural voice, the voice only goes so far. But if you get down there and you sing somewhere between your chest and your throat, the voice just carries, right? So one of the songs that we looked at in our course is a song called Jesus is Gonna Make Up My Dying Bed. It starts off with the idea of a telephone, because a telephone must have been a fairly, recent invention when this song was created, because it shows this line shows up. Ever since we've been married, in other words, Jesus is the groom and the church is the bride. Ever since we've been married, we haven't been a minute apart. He put the receiver in my hand and true religion in my heart. Right? So that receiver shows up. So let's see if I can channel a little Blind Willie. Well, ever since we got married, haven't been a minute apart. Put receiver in my hand, true religion in my heart. Well, 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 I can call him easy. Well, well, well. Well, well, well. Jesus gonna make up my dying bed. Well, Jesus hanging on the cross. They thought that he was lost. When it is a hun in my heart, hanging on the cross. Well, well, well. Well, well, well. Dying will be easy. Well, well, well. Dying will be easy. Jesus gonna make up my dying bed. Jesus hanging on the cross. Well, Jesus hanging on the cross. They take my mother home. Tell my disciples to take my mother home. Well, 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 I can die easy. Well, well, well. Well, well, well. Jesus gonna make up my dying bed.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah.
So we've got, hey, Tommy, how many tunes and artists are covered in the Evangelists?
I think there's like 5 individual sort of artist profiles, but there's also a lot of other performance examples from the 5 concepts in the first section too.
Yeah, so that's right. In the first section,
10 performances.
You give us, let's see, we have 5 really key concepts. The from spirituals to gospel music, passing chords and creating movement, which you demonstrated, major pentatonic and boogie woogie. But by the way, you have to check out the first course or the first live broadcast and see the Reverend's short history lesson on the boogie woogie, right? Mm-hmm. Using the relative minor and the 1-6-2-5 progression. So that all happens in the first section of that course. That's blues tradition, the Evangelists, and a little housekeeping, Reverend. We have 104 thumbs up, and
wow.
Thank you everybody for that.
Thank you.
We're going to give away 2 $100 gift cards from the pool of people that answered the trivia question correctly. That question is, the famous bluesman, Tampa Red, was called, quote, the man with the blank blank. Answer that question, enrolls you in that drawing. We're going to pull 2 winners. Zach will pull those in 5 minutes. Let's say in 5 minutes, we'll announce those 2 winners. Thank you for those thumbs up. It's really important to both the Reverend and TrueFire, and we really, really appreciate it. Let's answer some more questions.
All right.
Okay. So from Raymond, I always struggle. Raymond, I love you, man. I struggle with the last name. I think it's Nine Nice, which is closer than what I've been doing. Raymond, he's one of your fellow TrueFire artists.
Yes.
In Amsterdam, he has incredible courses here on TrueFire. We love him. I'm going to come visit him in Amsterdam soon. And he's probably going to slap me in the face for mispronouncing his name so much. But he tunes in all the time. He supports us. I want everybody to go check out his stuff on TrueFire. But he asks, does Reverend Robert Jones also do any Reverend Utah Smith, perhaps? Love that hypnotic gospel blues, he says.
Yeah, I'm aware of Reverend Smith, and it was amazing. I ran across him because one of the everybody's got somebody that they love, and it's always a challenge to try to incorporate their music. And I ran across Reverend Smith because he has these are incredible string runs at the beginning, and then he settles into this thing that sounds like But while I was trying to I ran across Reverend Smith in an effort to get Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who I love, right? And so only tangentially have I done anything with Reverend Smith, but definitely worthy of study. And that music had a certain energy to it. You think about how many churches you go to that had an organ or a piano, and that's great, but if you were a traveling evangelist, if you had a group, a quartet, and you showed up, they may not have a piano, or they may not have an organ, or they may have a lousy piano, and you've got to have this sound. Or you may not be playing in a church. You may be playing on a corner. You may be playing on Maxwell Street in Chicago or Hastings Street in Detroit. And so the advantage of taking your gospel music on a guitar and plugging in an amp so that you could be heard was this wonderful innovation. And so what really got me started on this stuff is I was literally lying in the bed one night, and, I'll say the Spirit said, get up and go look on the internet. And I ran into this little clip about this guy named Howard Carroll, who was the guitar player for the Dixie Hummingbirds. He just died at the age of 92 a couple years ago. But he wasn't the lead guitarist. He was the whole shebang. He was the drummer, the guitarist, the piano player. And when you listen to like songs from the heyday of the Dixie Hummingbirds with Ira Tucker, that guitar that you hear is a guy named Howard Carroll. And he doesn't get the credit that he deserves because, he's just a member of the group. He's singing, but he's also playing and laying down this amazing music. So all that simply to say that there's so many guitarists in this tradition, whether they are preachers, whether it's Reverend Lewis Overstreet or Reverend Utah Smith or whomever it is, or if it's a guitarist like Howard Carroll, that these guys kind of exist in anonymity, but are so important to that sound.
Awesome, man. Okay, let's tell them about that guitar, man. I love this story.
Yeah. Well, both of these guitars are pretty unique. I've been blessed with some pretty amazing instruments. This guitar started off as a house in Detroit. And in fact, I wrote a song about this guitar. I call it This Old House. And the gist of it is that it was a house that was built in Detroit in 1910. Stood there for 102 years until it was torn down in 2012. And this guitar builder named Gary Zimnicki, who's a friend of mine and a master guitar builder, decided, I'm tired of waiting for guitar wood to age. I'm going to go get some wood that's already old. So he goes to this place called Recovery Detroit, I think it was, and finds this wooden planking that used to be floorboards He buys a bunch of it. He gets walnut shelves, and the top comes from a Douglas fir ceiling joist that he cuts out, and he puts it all together. And this thing has these wonderful but very lightweight splints that allow him to bend that wood, that old wood. And so you end up with this new guitar that's 100 and, whatever it is, in 1910, it's 109 years old. So it's pretty cool. And
So you're playing a house, basically.
I'm playing a house, and I really call it This Old House. This guitar has a story behind it, too. I bought this guitar from a used shop, kind of a guitar. I won't call it a junk shop, but a guitar where you find broken pieces of guitar and stuff like that. And I found this. It had no finish on it. It had no frets. It had no tailpiece, nothing. And I looked at it and said, this guitar looks like it would be cool.
Uh-huh.
And so I bought it. Guy sold it to me for $40. Oh, I restored it, except I did not know how to do a fret job. Uh-huh. So I do my homemade fret job, and I play it, and it sounds terrible. I take it up to this really famous music store in Lansing, Michigan, about 90 miles from my house, called Elderly Instruments. Mm-hmm. I trade it in. I put it on consignment. I traded it in. I forget what I bought, and then I started thinking about this guitar. 2 days later, I called him. I said, hey, guys, you still got that guitar? No, we sold it. Oh, crap.
Oh, no.
So then I'm back up there again about a couple months later, and there it is. It's back, but now it has a professional fret job because whoever bought it either got a fret job done on it or that they did it at Elderly. I play it, plays like a dream. I take it home. I have a pickup that I want to put on it, and I'm looking for a knob, certain kind of knob. So I go back to that same junk shop I bought it from, and I say, you got a knob? And the guy, I open the case, the guy goes, I used to own that guitar, or at least one looked just like it. I bought it at Elderly Instruments up in Lansing, but I took it back because the neck was too fat. So this guitar goes 100 miles, all the way back around the world and comes back to me. So I figure I better keep it.
Oh, man. It is beautiful. I mean, both those guitars, great stories. Let's announce the winner of, the correct answer was?
The man with the golden guitar.
Right. And if you said gold guitar,
or
we
gold
accept
guitar,
that
golden guitar.
as a
It's
correct
acceptable.
answer as well. So, and yes, you did have to enter it in a form. I see a lot of people in the chat advising you accordingly. And no, you weren't supposed to put the correct answer in the chat thread because that decreases the odds of you winning. Okay. But we'll make sure that that's clear next time. The two winners of a $100 gift card at TrueFire, good as gold, is Jay Clark, 88, and Mathis Hillhorst. Here, maybe somebody can, hey, Zach, could you just paste those into, well, maybe not, because that's emails. But Jay Clark or Mathis Hillhorst, we will, there you go. We retracted. We will email you and tell you how to go about cashing in that great little prize for the correct answer. So I want to thank everybody. The Reverend, I think, had to go, but he'll be right back again. And we've got some cool, we're running the back to school thing right now. Check it out. There's all kinds of daily activities. We're giving away some very, very, very cool stuff this month, and a lot of it. There's a ton of ways to earn entries in that. We love our promotions over here. This is a month-long kind of back-to-school thing. Lots of new courses being launched, lots of these TrueFire Live things. And I just want to thank everybody. I see a lot of the same names on here every time we do a live broadcast. It's I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. It makes it so much more fun and something that we look forward to all of the time to see you. and I know that the artists love it as well. And here, the Reverend is back again.
Sorry about that.
Hey, live broadcast.
Dogs of a certain age.
There you go. I'm right there with you. In fact, while you play us out, I may follow your example, okay? I was stretching like a madman.
It sounds
there,
like
okay?
a winner.
Anyway, you think about what you want to play us out. Maybe you could do that song about the house if you wanted to.
What a great idea.
Whatever
Absolutely.
you want to do. And again, thank you, everybody. We will see you next time, and really appreciate your support. Remember to check out, take advantage of that promo code. Have a look at both these pre-order courses. Have a look at the First Blues Traditions. And probably most important of all, would you shout out to us and let us know other topics you'd like the Reverend to cover in our quest to document with video and music and audio and whatever else the history of the blues. With that, I want to thank you, Reverend, for sharing this time with us as well.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank all the folks here at TrueFire. You guys really do an amazing job of making somebody feel welcome and setting the stage and sort of, creating excellence. And I really consider it to be a blessing when however it was that we ran across each other, Brad. But I'm looking forward to having this long-term relationship with this wonderful company as well. And so we were talking about this, and we were talking about this instrument, and I'm being adjusted here. Cool, thank you. The first time I saw myself on that video, I'm like, I like this, man. I like the way I look, but where does that mole come from? And of course, that's that little mic. But here's that story of that guitar that Brad was talking about, the one I'm playing. This old house was built on Trumbull Street back in 1910 when the whole world worked for Henry Ford. He was the poor man's friend. Detroit money built it, but it outlived the fame of a city that put the world on wheels and gave Motown its name. But when you come from Detroit, you have to know, my friend, that you cannot surrender and you dare not give in. And even when you're broken and you're almost at the end, know that if you save the pieces, you will rise again. Milton Smith lived in this old house for almost 60 years, and it had its share of singing, and it had its share of tears. Through the Coolies and Hernandezes, time would take its toll. 2012, they took her down, 102 years old. But when you come from Detroit, you have to know, my friend, you cannot surrender and you dare not give in. And even when you're broken and you're almost at the end, know that if you save the pieces, you will sing again. I'm just a Detroit storyteller, but I travel near and far. And the Detroit storyteller loves to play Detroit guitars. So I met a builder named Zimnicki, a man of awesome skills. And arch tops, flat tops, ukuleles, ain't nothing he can't build. Say, got something I'd like to show you, and I think it's kinda sweet. I built this from this old house that used to stand on Trumbull Street. I used maple from the floorboard and walnut from the shelves. And this top is from a ceiling joist that I cut and cleaned myself. Now I play a Detroit guitar made of 100-year-old wood. And I got to tell you, she sings mighty good. 'Cause when you come from Detroit, you have to know, my friend, that you cannot surrender and you dare not give in. And even when you're broken and you're almost at the end, know that if you save the pieces, you will sing again. Know that if you save the pieces, you will sing again.